travel aisle, or another car, travel aisle car. So other than that specific dimension, it costs more.
Can I ask you a question? Has anybody thought about using the whole entrance and the whole front of Vantage Hill, provide parking for the rest of the community, as well as, I mean, that way you're just bordered by the road and all the development area. So
you're saying that the parking lot that's in front of the pool, you mean use some of that?
I mean, if you think about it, you're trying to develop a maximum thing or just those things, aside from the reserved ones that are out there. I don't know, something.
That's why I was saying, I think going out there and flagging exactly what, you guys have the advantage of, there's no gun to your head.
Right.
Money and something that we don't
Yeah.
mind looking at.
And this is one of the things to go for maximum density. Is unlikely to lead to a successful vote with completely eliminate the possibility of a lot of creativity from the developer community coming to us and saying,
Have an engineer kind of look at what he could fit on it, and then you can start to bubble up some of this enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yes. But I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think, you look at, I couldn't get my head around it. They'll come up with the ideas. You don't need to go to them and say I'm selling 20 towns or 15, 2/2, whatever. Just say, look, here's the land. We were talking on the phone the other day that the key or the goal for us on the sales, a horse running by itself doesn't run as fast. So we get as many horses in the race, and then we kind of prepare a matrix where I go through their plan and pull out all the interesting things so we can do some sort of apples to apples comparison. Because that's also a little confusing on how they write it down. So you can say, here's the deposit, here's how much time, here's the product, here's how much money you're getting, so on and so forth. And then you make it, then it's your call. And all we're there to do.
So thank you. I think you just described part of what you think you could do for us, and one of the things that evaluation and so on and so forth. Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience doing that and how you might go about doing that for us?
And is this on a commission basis, or is this a fee plan?
Oh yeah, we're going to get to the how do they get paid a little later.
That's a fair question. I said the Fraser Forbes started as the easy part. That's what comes naturally to. They've been all doing it so long. They're personally connected to all these different developers with the opportunity. What do you want to do? And that service, that is a service beyond that. And that I actually put that in the bin of the consulting services side of our company, which is a fee, and it's not as onerous probably as just a monthly fee. We can do it in several different ways. One, I was going to charge you 5% for the fee to sell the property. If you use our consulting services, I would knock that down to 4%. Right now, I probably need some sort of retainer. I got to think that part through, but that's typically how we've done it.
Great. So let's assume that we hired you under some kind of a deal that we put together for consulting services. What would you do for us? What are we going to get for whatever that is? Whether it's a commission on the back end, or whether it's some kind of a monthly fee, or whether it's a retainer, or whatever all of that is. Whatever we get that deal to look like, what is it that you'd be doing for us?
Yeah, Tom and I had this conversation right before we came over here. It's interesting. I kind of see a little break in how it works. So what you would do, or what I would do, is offering to figure out what it is you're really selling, or what can be sold. Then the sales team would take over, and while we're in the sales process, I wouldn't feel it's right that if I were selling. So let's say you pay me month 1, you pay me month 2, then we go to market in month 3 and month 4 or whatever. We're dealing with various groups. Yeah, don't pay me those months. But then when we find the developer, and when you just through some period of time in the process, and as your representative. So they go to the county, they go to the Residents Citizen Association, I go too. A lot of the times, we end up actually running their entitlement process for them. The benefit to you is it makes it go faster, which means you get your money quicker. And again, they don't agree to something that has negative impacts on you. So you never want them to agree to anything and commit the property until they paid you. Because what happens if they, they blow up and there's nobody left and you're left holding back. I want to buy the property, but I want you to, hold a note with some owner financing for part of it, and I want you to subordinate your note to a bank. Then they default with the bank, and you literally have to buy.
So you're describing, sort of the developers, or you've defined the property, sort of the general thing, and then what are you doing? Issues that we're all going to be able to listen to. I mean, sort of what do we get for the fee?
Well, for the brokerage, I'll speak to the brokerage first. We put together a pretty extensive package of information about the property that we get out to, our list of customers. This kind of real estate, it's not like MRS or MLS. It's not like that where you go on computers to find it. It's a different kind of community. And right now I think we have, look, we're not going to give this property to guys that only build custom homes in Potomac. We're going to focus this on the people that do stuff here. When we do that, though, we don't like to limit ourselves because you never know where deals will come from. Claude Wheeler and Alexandria may say, I'll do something over here. So, we'll kind of get a set of folks that we send it to, and the package we put together, I'll send you some examples. They're about 20 pages thick. They're pretty informative. The goal of that package is when the land acquisition guy from the developer or the builder gets it, all the information he needs is either in there or a phone number for where he can get it. He can put his package together that he has to send to his corporate guys to get approval to spend the money to buy the property or to go forward and take the next step. So that's the brokerage side. Additionally, of course, we go through all the offers with you and dollars, and we call them back and say, look, you need to be at 11. You just kind of push, help them push. And we'll help you negotiate the deal. The structures involved. One structure I always like to highlight, which in a case like yours may not be pertinent, I don't know. In Phoenix, you just go to the next slice of desert if you want another building lot. How hard is it to go to the desert, put a driveway in and call it that? Money for them. So what the landowners started doing is when Bob Builder would build a house, they would literally give him the land for free, but then when he sold the house, they would get 1% of the home price. Well, the downside of that is you have to wait longer to get your money and you take market risk and so on and so forth. But the upside to the guys in Phoenix, and this, I would say this, if this property were like in Hagerstown, or any difficult piece of property where it's hard to get a builder to take risk, and you're looking at a group of buyers, in this case developers that are smaller, who don't have a lot of capital and cash, they can do this and they don't need that much upfront cash. The home buyer buys the house, and they pay you $23,000. But on some level, you're also taking a little bit more risk. Anyway, lots of different structures, lots of different ways to do these deals. If you sell this subject only to the PRC approval that they mentioned in the Walsh and Lucci memo, you might get a check in 12 months from when you start. If you wait until final plan approval where all the engineers have done everything and you have your permits and stuff like that, that might be 18 months to 2 years. And there's different numbers associated with those. Piece, like I said, we will work with the lawyers, the engineers, the planners, and all the other consultants, which here you're going to have traffic, cultural resource, archaeologists, all those folks, soils, and we'll work with them to put all the information together and then vet the information, make sure it's right, People make mistakes all the time, especially with survey guys, believe it or not, make mistakes. And kind of shepherd the thing forward.
So the developer is going to have their own lawyer who's going to be putting the package together for Reston, but more importantly for Fairfax County. And you guys would sort of be our representatives in that entire process to make sure that engineering plans make sense, that there are no fatal flaws.
And in a PRC, and I apologize, I don't know how this quite works. In a straight rezoning, this would have a set of proffers that's attached to it. In a PRC, I assume it would be something very similar to that. So, for example, any new house you build, you got to pay parks $1,800. Any new school kid you generate, the county gets $10,395. You know, so on and so forth. And the proffer system you may have heard just got changed in Richmond last week, whatever. The new laws won't take effect until July 1st. And what they say is that the county can't require you, the developer, to do anything off your property. Kind of a double-edged sword. It doesn't necessarily help the developer. Before, you could go through this proffer process and, you know, Michael Fry could say, I want a brand new ball field. And you go build a ball field, and you build the field, and you get your zone. Now that kind of muddies those waters just a little bit. But we would work on those proffers, because to the extent that I can make it as cheap as possible for the developer, that's more money that's available for you.
Great. I think that we can now cycle back, because you keep on bringing us back to the money for us. You know, tell us a little bit of your thoughts about valuation. Do you have some thoughts about things? You were talking about density may trade off with, so you thought the Walsh-Galucci valuation was way too low. I don't disagree. Tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, just as by way of example, on Centerville Road, there's a project called Discovery Square. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Near this new CIA building that's out there. Recently, the most recent townhouses that sold out there, Lennar, bought 150 townhouses from a developer finance guy. And they essentially paid $26 million for 150 grand a unit. Those units will sell in the 600s, and they'll probably be 4 stories. You know, using that as a benchmark. Here, if you wanted to sell something in the high 4s, low 5s as a base price, which feels about right. You know, the old adage, you know, people use 33% or whatever of the house price is the land. Doesn't really work, but let's say it was $500,000 house, you could probably pay, in this case, I don't know, close to about 100 grand for the lot. So if you had 20 lots, that's $2 million.
Okay.
And that is just so back the napkin and broad stroke.
Right. So, and one of the things that we would want in an owner's representative is, I think we would want a really good scrub of maximizing proceeds for us, and therefore trying to not minimize the profits for the developer, but certainly giving us an edge in it, under the theory that we have one of the only vacant lots available for development in Reston that is not so huge that it's going to take a developer $60 zillion to do it for a good medium-sized, you know, it's a good clean project for a developer for whom this is a good size project to do. And there aren't a lot of other opportunities like this because you're either doing big or you're doing onesies and twosies. So it's sort of we've been told by the 5 law firms we've talked to that this has sort of been a very good sweet spot. That being the case, you talked about competition between developers. That certainly is something that we have heard and talked about before. So I'd like to run some math, if I could, please. If you're talking about townhouses, you're talking about what, 1,800 square feet?
A 20 by 40 townhouse is 3 levels, is 2,000 square feet.
So you're going to call it 2,000 square feet, and you're saying 500,000 for a 2,000 square, so you're talking about a sales price of $250 a foot. Now that strikes me as a little low for new construction, brand new construction in Reston.
You know, it is kind of buried back there. The visibility of the project isn't great for new construction. I think, and again, that was 500 grand as the base price. So if you think of a townhouse, so think of a single family house. You know, you buy a new house, let's say you want a side sunroom, so you pay extra for it. You want a finished basement, you pay extra for it. You know, the bump out the back, pay extra. So the average house, you end up spending about 11.5% of the purchase price of the house on options. It's the law, large numbers, whatever. That's across the country. It's a really pretty good number. In a townhouse where you don't have the opportunity for these structural options, you know, you're going to have the extra padding in the rug, the upgraded kitchen, better appliances. You end up spending between 6.5% and 7%. 7 is tops. Let's say 6.5%. So a $500,000 purchase price, or $500,000 base price. The purchase price usually will then be, that's like $535 or close to $530. Should be able to do it in my head, but so you just have to kind of bake that into when you're figuring out to pay the price per foot.
Okay, so let's just run the scenario with your numbers. So let's say that the sales proceeds, or that the gross proceeds from the sale of the property are $250 a square foot. So what are we going to pay on a commission to sell it? What's the developer going to sell out at as a commission? 6%, 5%? Doing 20 of them at once, or 30 of them, or 40 of them at once?
So we have to back up one more step in selling, because it's a lot different if your buyer is D.R. Horton or Pulte or NBR, because they're going to have their own internal sales companies. They build cheaper. They have their own internal sales team. So instead of 6%, they're going to assume that their internal people sell half the units, and then half the people have a realtor. So it's not 6%, it's 4.5%. So it's little things like that. Plus the more units you can get, the more of a sense of community that you can create. And if I can create a sense of community, I can charge more. So, yes, in Reston, if I was at the Reston Town Center and I built 20 townhouses, I can sell those things for $750. But I'm not at the Reston Town Center, I'm right here. So what can I sell these for? And you just have to look at all the various factors.
So let's assume that it's $500,000 in the developer sells for $500,000, and 5%, $25,000 comes off as the commission.
Okay.
Okay. What's the developer required what's their internal rate of return break even in order to have a profit on the project, where they'll say go versus it's too low, no go? Do they need 8%, 10%? 4%, what's the current market on a developer's profit margin? Annual rate of return.
So it's different between a developer and a builder, because a developer, all he's doing is the dirt, the pipe, the pavement, and then he's going to put his layer of profit on there. Then he's going to sell it to the builder, who's going to build the house, and then he puts his layer of profit on there. So for you, if you sell it straight to the builder, you can kind of eliminate that one layer of profit, and that goes back to the value of the land.
Great, so let's talk about the
house, 2,000 square feet. And one of the numbers I'll go into, a larger builder, or we'll just say any builder right now. Let's say he wants to earn 20% gross margin. So 20% gross margin on $500,000 is $100,000. The cost of sales and marketing is typically about 10% of the sales price. Now that includes the cost of models, the cost of those sales commissions to the realtors, concessions that you would pay to closing costs, points.
Your G&A, your overhead, your general administrative.
So let's say that's 10%. So from $500,000, we took off my profit, which was 100, so now I'm down to 400. I took off the 50, because that's my cost of sales. Now I'm going to take away, what does it cost me to physically build that house? Well, a 2,000 square foot townhouse in this market, if it's a larger builder, brick on one side, that adds about $5,000. But let's say that's about $125,000 to $130,000. Now, I'll tell you, I'm probably a little high with that number, but for the purposes of this, close enough. So I take away $125,000. Next, I'm going to take away the cost of land development. That's the cost of the pavement, the dirt. Dirt is really what trips you up usually. The utilities are obviously there, since you guys have bathrooms, kitchens. So that's not going to be a problem, but that dealing with that hole is going to cost money. So, you know.
That hole is part of the underground parking. It's an asset. Come on, think like an owner's representative.
National subterranean parking.
So the cost of developing that, probably not horrible. I'm going to guess $50,000 to $60,000 per building lot. So we'll take off another $50,000 to $60,000. Then the last thing we're going to take off is the proffers that the county requires. Let's say in this case, let's just say they're 10. So for $500,000, we took away 100, so you're down to 400. We took away 50, so you're down to 350. We took away 125, so I'm down to 225. I took away, we'll go down 50, so I'm at 175. And I took away 10, right?
At least.
So now these are just round numbers. So now I'm at 165. That's the value of the land
Residual.
if I don't have to pay any interest costs on all that other stuff.
So how much do we have to pay the builders when I get this done?
So an easy way to figure out interest, I'll just tell you that, let's just assume that this guy can't go to a bank and he's got to go to private investors and his interest rate's about 15%. So if we think that it's going to take him 2 years to do this whole deal, then assuming that he sells it in kind of an even pace, I'm just going to charge you 15% discount and go back from that. And so in that case, in this case, that would be another 15 and 7, 8, so $23, $24. So you're down to like $144, whatever, per unit. That's how much you make.
And you haven't put in any of the soft costs. So, you know, we're talking to lawyers and stuff like that. You know, it's going to cost somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000 to do all of the engineering and the soils engineering, the traffic engineering, and the architecture and so on and so forth. Right. Is that a rough number that?
Your number is exactly right. Although some of those soft costs are baked into like the development costs.
Okay.
Not all of them. And this is where the smaller jobs, smaller projects are harder because it costs the same if I'm doing 10 houses or 60 houses.
Right.
So it's less to spread that across.
Okay, so there's like 140,000 potentially a unit as the vague, rough net after all costs and the develop or the builder's profit and so on and so forth. That conceivably some part of that would be ours.
Well, no, that would be all yours.
Yeah, okay. All right, great. So, you know, it becomes a how many units can we put on the site?
You know, in Reston, you know, you start with some of the older planning, you see a lot more front loaded stuff. So that front loaded 20-foot unit tends to be only 38 feet deep, which can kind of help with your geometry. And also that helps save your trees in the back, less pavement, might be the way to go.
So can you just say,
if I had a 20-footer, but I only had a one-car garage 20-footer, so it's 20 feet wide, one-car garage, front door. But the garage, you access the garage from the front of your house, not from an alley in the back, then pavement. So you can save the trees, less pavement, and actually make the unit just a shade smaller. It doesn't need to be as deep. And that unit is 1,970 feet.
so 20 by 30?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And the reason I use these dimensions, they don't have to go call an architect and say, design this. They can
Right.
just go, psh.
So thanks, Steve, because that cycles me back to something you've said several times, and I wanted to just check it out with you. You know, if we're talking 20, 30, 40, something along those number of units, you keep on talking about a big developer, a D.R. Horton, a national firm, and so would they be interested in something what I would consider to be kind of this small?
I'm only hesitating because it depends on the specific situation of the builder. So if I looked at